So in case you haven't realized, Chanukah is fast approaching. So I thought this week, rather than a message, I thought we would discuss some of the most frequently asked questions relating to Chanukah. So the first one that people often ask me is, when is the correct time to actually light the menorah? So ideally, one should light the candles or the oil menorah as soon as it gets dark. That's the way we do it in the diaspora. In Israel, they have a tradition to light slightly earlier. That's from sunset onwards. But generally, we should light as soon as it's dark. Now, obviously, bearing in mind that it gets dark before 5 o'clock, most fathers or mothers are still working then. And therefore, when one comes home from work much later, that should be the time that the candles should be lit. The question does arise, what is the cutoff point? Because we know the purpose of lighting is in order to publicize the miracle. And therefore, in order to do so, we require other people to be around, to witness, to see the candles being that they're lit. So very often a person can go out, or come home very late, or they've got a wedding and they're going to come home, in the early hours of the morning. Can they still light the menorah? So the answer is it depends. As long as there are some people around, there's at least someone else around, another family member, or if you live on a busy road where there are people, that are still walking past and it's still dark, then one can still light the menorah despite the fact that it may be the middle of the night or much later. The next question that often comes up, I guess, is how are we meant to light? What's the correct way of lighting? So the rule of thumb is that you light from right to left, but you add an additional flame each night from left to right. So the candles, as we already mentioned, they have to last, or the oil has to last at least half an hour into the night. And we should always light the newest candle first. So when it comes to Shabbat, and we're going to light next Shabbat, so we have to bear in mind that because we bring in Shabbat early, so we have a problem there, because if you just put in enough oil or light regular candles, they'll burn half an hour, but that's not into the night. That will still be whilst it's still light, because we light before sunset. So therefore, we have to bear in mind that you have to make sure that you use candles or oil when it comes to Erev Shabbat that is sufficient to ensure that it will burn and last in half an hour into the night, so that when you come back from shul, then you are able to see the flame. So the final question we want to deal with is, what happens if you decide that you go to friends for a Chanukah party and they light the menorah and it's the time of lighting, it's dark, it's 5 o'clock. So what do? Do you light with them, or do you wait till you go home and light in your own home? So the rule of thumb is that a person can only light the menorah and fulfill his obligation in the place where they will be sleeping that night. It has to be where you are dwelling that night. So therefore, even though you're with friends and they're lighting the menorah, you can't fulfill your obligation if you plan on sleeping at home, and therefore when you get home you would have to light the menorah. Question also arises, it's very problematic if you're traveling by train through the night, or more probably if you're flying on Chanukah. What does one do? I certainly would not advise you to try to take out your menorah and to light it on the plane. I don't think you'll get to light it for half an hour. So the next best thing, if you can't light a real flame, is that you take out a clear bulb. So for example, a mag light or a flashlight that has a clear bulb, and minimally we only have to light one candle, one flame, and therefore if you just leave that for half an hour, you can even make a blessing over it, and that would suffice if you are on a plane. Wishing everyone a happy Chanukah, Shabbat Shalom, and hope everyone has an enjoyable festival.